So what we looked at, that was the initial discussion that we had, and based on further discussion with city staff, basically what we said is, well, what happens if we could put some alternatives together for consideration? And so we put, 4 alternatives together, and this was the alternative that we just looked at, so the 0.12% in 2017, followed by 6.5%, 2s, et cetera. We looked at, well, what happens if we recalibrate or rebalance in 2018? And so again, we are not doing anything today. It's 0.12 based on the CPI. We would need about 14%, again, because we're waiting a little bit more time. So instead of the 12.5, it becomes 14%. And then again, more inflationary type levels. Use of reserves about $236,000 in that particular case. Jumping down here, what if we phase in and begin a little sooner? When we were starting discussions in September, we thought maybe a January 1 implementation of this particular option. And so here we tried to levelize a bit more and said, well, what if we do 4.4% for about 4 years, followed by inflationary increases? Again, would require a little bit of use of our reserves, a little bit less because we're starting a bit sooner. And then what happens if we just delay until contract expiration for 2019? And so you can see here 0%, 0%, and then it would require about a 16.5% increase.
It would be 0, 0, and then the shock treatment.
That's right.
Which we don't want.
That's right. And so these were the various alternatives that we kind of discussed in terms of the committee and kind of really back and forth in terms of what particular option made sense, what kind of use of reserves were we looking at in terms of being able to provide these various different alternatives. But essentially, really the driving force is that we are falling behind the cost of service. And so can we begin chipping away sooner than later and not necessarily have to delay until the contract renewal in fiscal year 2019? But again, that was a big question in terms of that point. And so I think Tim was doing quite a bit of outreach in terms of trying to find out, of these alternatives, what really would be the preferred alternative. Do you want to go back?
Nope.
Okay.
We can move ahead, and then I'll come back to this alternative slide. I basically just wanted to take a minute and I introduced the folks from the rate study committee that are present. There were several others that served. We had John Kimberling, Charles Zillinger from U of I, Larry Lucas, Lori Wynn, and City Councilman Steed served as the liaison. And we did meet on the 22nd of September of 2016. We discussed those rate strategies, and at that point, the rate study committee recommended holding a workshop for the cities as well as Latah County, the affected folks that held contracts with the city. We scheduled a workshop for November 3rd, 2016, and we only had 2 cities, and 1 county commissioner showed up for that. So it wasn't very well attended. So basically, I took this information on the road show and attended several city council meetings out there in the county, and Amanda Bashaw from Latah County traveled to those meetings with me. She's got an established working relationship with those folks, and it was very helpful, so I do want to thank Amanda.
So we've had outreach to every one of these cities.
Yes. And the consensus that we were able to reach with the county and the cities was most of them wanted to go with the alternative 3, which was the 4.4%. And we can go back to that. I have not got a definite from the city of Genesee yet. However, Mr. Odenberg is attending here today. I don't know.
Well, and as we go along, Tim, before we make a final decision, I want to listen to we got 2 mayors here.
Absolutely,
and of course
absolutely.
And a counselor from Genesee as well, if he wishes to speak, and anybody else that's in attendance before we make a final decision.
Absolutely.
So everybody can say what's on their mind.
Basically when I went out and visited these cities and provided them the information that we presented to the committee, I indicated that obviously the city would we'd honor the current contracts, but we just felt like it was a better approach to start incrementally pecking away at this deficit and get caught back up. And it would just be easier for all of our customers to swallow if we did it little bits at a time rather than the big sticker shock of 16.5%. So. And then the other thing we did was we have drafted amended contracts to reflect this alternate 3, but rather than beginning January 1st, it would become effective March 1. So with council approval, we'll send those amended contracts out, and that's basically it for the presentation unless you had additional questions.
Well, I'd like to invite the mayor's up to speak to us, if you'd like. I mean, you don't have to, but Steve, if you want to come up and address us, and I know who you are, but I would like you to tell us your name and where you're from and your title, and we'll hear from you.
Honorable Council and Mayor Bill, I'd just like to say I'm Steve Odenberg, Mayor at Genesee, and being an elected official, you run into these things occasionally to where we have to be the bearer of bad news, but it is part of being an elected official, and we haven't had a council vote yet. We have had quite a little bit of discussion since Tim and Amanda came down, and we will be bringing this up on our next agenda as probably the first item on the agenda to make a decision. And then I myself, I can't speak for the rest of the council, but I'm sure that alternate 3 is what we've been discussing, and I think that's probably the most logical and long-term economically feasible way to do it. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Odenberg. Have the other mayor come up, please.
Thank you. My name's Dale Leisure, and I'm a pro tem mayor at Kendrick at this point, but I'll be sworn in at the February council meeting. And I had spent 6 years prior to that being mayor, so I kind of understand what's going on. And I realize after February I'll probably be sworn at. But yeah, we accepted alternative number 3, and we made that decision that night when they were down there doing their presentation. So we're all set to go.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Mayor Dale, you bet.
Latah County Commissioner Dave McGraw from Troy again. I've always said that there's several businesses in Latah County that absolutely have to exist. Gritman's one of them. Have to have a hospital. You have to have electricity. So Gritman's one. Vista's one. You have to have electricity. And solid waste. You have to have solid waste services. So we've been getting a pretty good deal over the years for the last several years. And from what I hear from the scuttlebutt around, that's a lot easier to chew on at 4% a year than a giant 16% at the end. So I would support. Amanda, would you say anything here in a minute? I'll let you say whatever you have on your mind. But everything we've heard, I think the citizens of Latah County would much appreciate the 4% than a big jump. So appreciate your work on this.
Thank you, Commissioner McGraw. Others that would like to come up and talk to us, come on up. And please state your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Amanda Bashaw, Latah County Solid Waste Coordinator, 858 Indian Hills, Moscow, Idaho. I'd just like to say it's been a great group of people to work with. My concern is making sure that all the rural cities and everybody knows that I believe in the new amendment that's going to be proposed is the CPI increase is going to be null and void. So it will just be the 4.4% increase that we've been presented with today that we've all been discussing with the rural cities and throughout the rate study committee. And that it's my understanding, I believe the city, and especially here in Angeles, speak today that like in 2020 we see things kind of leveling back out where those increases are going to come down, that we just reassure those rural communities and the county that that is going to be reevaluated every couple years, which I know it will in working with Tim, but I do think that as we see things transition through, you know, we've seen the CPI for many years keep our costs where they need to be. And I mean, I just think we've implemented so many changes over time and additional expenses, and the CPI is not keeping up, as we all know, economically. It's it's not holding, the increase that needs to be out there for sanitation funds, by all means. So just that we can assure those people that I believe Tim will do a good job looking at that every couple of years if it needs to just be froze, and that increase won't be passed on if it's not needed.
Well, thank you for that, Amanda, and thank you for the work you've done on that, because what's important for all these small cities to know is that we're all in this together. I mean, it's all of us. It's not just any specific city. It's all of us working together to get this thing worked out.
And historically, when I first started working with the county and working with Gary at the very beginning, I mean, after, 10 years into the county, we even reduced disposal fees at that time because it was being overcharged. I mean, so I have that historical background and that faith in that. I just want the rural cities to understand that too.
Thank you, Amanda.
Bill?